Welcome everybody to this month's full moon reading. We are looking at full moon in Aries this month. And I'm not going to lie, Aries is not one of my favourite energies in the world. I'm not a big fan of fire signs, to be honest. Not like anything personal, sorry guys. But as a water sign myself, I find fire signs, and especially full moons in fire signs, to be quite intense. So this month, with full moon being in Aries, it is a pretty intense one. But I've pulled the cards. We have 10 cards here. For anyone wondering, it is the Pagan Otherworlds deck that I'm using. I think I used it last month as well, but it is one of my favourite decks to use. I just really love. I'm a big fan of oil paintings, and that's kind of the vibe that the Pagan Otherworlds gives off. I love an oil painting. So we're going to be focusing on how we can kind of navigate this full moon energy in Aries, what it is asking us to do, what we can look at, what kind of things we need to be aware of for this like month's moon cycle. So let's get started. So first of all, we have 3 of Cups over here in the past position. So to me, this is kind of, oh, it's got a little pumpkin on it as well. Didn't notice that the first time. To me, this kind of represents this summer coming to an end. So the days getting shorter, the daylight hours getting shorter, us not having as much sunlight, especially if you are like me in the UK, in the north, where we get very little sun. But it's this winding down of energy. So we've had these summer and spring months. They've now passed and we're into the winter and autumn months. So this kind of vibrant, celebratory energy that we tend to get with the 3 of Cups is starting to close. And I think a lot of the times people can panic about this because they feel so energized and pumped and amazing during the summer months that they really, really dread the darker autumn, winter months. So if that is you, I'm here to say, don't panic. It's not that these kind of darker months are to be feared or to be kind of reluctantly embraced. It is just a different shift of energy. So as humans, we are designed to thrive off the sunlight. So back in the day before clocks and time, we would rise with the sun and we would go to sleep when the sun goes down. So we tend to have more energy when we have more sunlight. So what that means for autumn winter is just that our energy starts to kind of settle down. And when our energy starts to settle down, we then move into this really nice kind of 3 of Swords. If you can't really see that because it's underneath there. Ta-da! Which is always a scary card to get because it looks quite terrifying. But I promise you, in this instance, it is not. It's fine. But we have 3 of Swords underneath. We have the Hermit on top. So these summer days coming to an end and us slowly retreating into our kind of own little bubble, our own little space. So that's kind of where the Hermit comes in. So we're kind of going inwards with the darker days. Obviously, he has a lamp to kind of light his way. But with the darker days, we're encouraged to spend more time with ourselves in our internal world, to really look inwards, assess kind of what has gone before, reflect on the year, and just kind of settle down into this really cozy, personal energy that autumn and winter usually encourages us to do. So whenever the autumn comes around, you will often hear, I mean, I am 100% an autumn girl. I absolutely love autumn. It is amazing. It is the best season, and I will hear no more about it. When autumn rolls around, all you want to do is kind of get snuggled up in some blankets. You want to have like a good book. You want to have like a nice hot chocolate, or, you know, hot chocolate with Baileys is a must, especially around December time. But you kind of feel this drawing inwards. Your energy starts to kind of, instead of being projected out into the external world, it starts to kind of slowly absorb inwards. And that's kind of where the Hermit is coming from with this. So with the Hermit, we also have Three of Swords. So these two together is kind of an indication of really taking some time to assess where our head's at, where our mindsets are at, what kind of mindset are we going into this next lunar cycle, what kind of things are we thinking about over this like latter half of this cycle. So we're at the peak at the moment, the full moon, so our energy is up. We have a lot of kind of this kind of buzzing, this fire energy of full moon in Aries. So how can we channel that inwards? What can we look at? What can we kind of assess? Is there beliefs that we have that are no longer serving us? Is there a new kind of mind frame we can start building for ourselves for this latter half of the year? If you do struggle with seasonal things like seasonal depression, or you kind of just really dread these colder, darker months, really sitting down and thinking to yourself, how can I reframe this? How can I reframe this negative view that I have on this time of year? How can I adjust this so that I don't wallow in it? How can I find kind of the silver lining of it? So really just assessing those kind of internal dialogues that you've kind of got going on. Moving upwards into the conscious position, we have Page of Pentacles. So again, it's this going back to foundations, really sitting in your own energy, alone. You know, alone sounds terrible, like lonely, but not lonely, just with yourself. Really assessing kind of what kind of life you want to live in these latter halves of the month. So that might be really closely tied with this Three of Swords. So your mindset kind of creates your reality. Your internal thoughts create how you see the world, and how you see the world is how you experience the world. So really having a look at those two together and seeing where you can find those links and those connections, and being like, oh, okay, because I see things in this particular way, it's maybe attracting more negativity because I'm stuck in this certain way of thinking about things. I'm wearing these kind of like horrible kind of, what's the opposite of rose tinted glasses? I don't know what that is, but if there is something, that's what we're wearing. So how can we readjust that? So really kind of assessing those foundations, identifying where our mindsets, our beliefs, our thoughts are influencing this material world, and what can we do about that? So again, coming back to that Hermit card, it's all this internal work that we are doing, and using this fiery energy of Aries to really power this and drive us through it, because it can be quite hard. It can feel like a slog. Not many people want to dive into that. You know, people don't want to look at the negatives, they just constantly want to see the positives. But the issue with that is that often we can avoid addressing what we need to address. So really using this fiery energy to kind of fuel this Hermit work that we're doing. And then down in the subconscious position, we have the Ten of Swords. Again, if you have the normal Rider-Waite deck, it is not the most pleasant looking card. It's a guy lying on the floor with a load of swords in his back. A bit daunting. Again, with the skull, not a very happy card. But with the Ten of Swords, right down here in the subconscious position, it is kind of saying again, mentally this time, goodbye to these kind of this cycle that we've had. So the spring and summer cycle, we're saying goodbye to this, and now we are stepping into the autumn winter cycle. So we're assessing kind of what things we have been carrying with us through this kind of period, what we need to leave here, and what we kind of can go into. So the Ten of Swords is very much a new beginning for a lot of people. So with the illustration on this card, it's not as easy to see, but if you do have the Rider-Waite deck, there is like this sunrise happening in the background. So this guy is lying on the floor covered in swords. Well, I say covered, stabbed with swords. But in the background, there is a new day rising. So this idea of refreshing and starting fresh and having a more optimistic outlook on the future. So again, we kind of come back to this Hermit and this Three of Swords of really healing maybe these habits that we've had every single year. So every single year you may go, oh God, like autumn, winter's coming around, I don't want to do it. If that's the case, how can you change that this year? What adjustments can you make? How could you be a different version of who you were in spring and summer in autumn, winter? How can you carry this kind of positivity across into a time of year where we do tend to feel a bit more down, or we feel a bit less motivated to do things? What kind of adjustments can we make for ourselves, especially in our routines and kind of daily structures, which again is where the Page of Pentacles will come in? What can we do to kind of reassess this? How can we create an autumn winter routine for ourselves that really benefits who we are in this kind of latter half of this cycle? Because just like the year goes through cycles, so do we, and we kind of move with the cycle. But if we don't adjust things in order to kind of benefit who we are in the moment, we can get stuck kind of living in the past, really. We're not really living so much in the present. I don't know whether that makes sense. It made sense in my head, but I hope it makes sense to you. But yeah, cycles. We're all about cycles. And as we move forward, again, we have another Pentacles card. I think that's the last one we have. Yes, it is. Nine of Pentacles, which is this kind of mature wisdom of Earth, the material world, our health, our physical body, the things that we can kind of touch and see, and like everything that surrounds us. So really understanding, again, like I've just said, those habits, those routines, those structures that we have in place. What kind of things could we do? So, for example, I will use myself as an example. During autumn and winter, I mean, I have problems with my energy levels anyway, but as autumn and winter rolls around, I do find that I get less sociable. I just don't want to leave the house. I feel very kind of introverted. And so I have to make small adjustments to kind of influence myself to step out the house, be more sociable, but I do it in little steps. So I don't have the same routine in autumn, winter that I have in spring and summer. So spring and summer, I might be out doing all sorts of stuff, events, meeting people. I mean, not so much in the pandemic, but usually that was what would be what I'm doing. If you enjoy outdoor activities, maybe in the spring and summer you are like full on outside enjoying yourself, water skiing, paddleboarding, whatever, and then autumn winter comes around and you just stop that completely. And that is usually when you kind of see this real shift in your mindset and your kind of happiness levels, how much joy you get because you've stopped doing these things that you love. So how can you transfer these? How can you adjust them and reframe them in order to fit where you are right now, your energy levels, how happy you are, kind of, you know, your mental well-being and your physical well-being. So really assessing those kind of day-to-day things that you do. Maybe it could be that a simple thing, Nine of Pentacles could be, is that you add an extra 10 minutes of meditation to your day. Or you say to yourself, okay, well, when the rain stops, because it's been absolutely pouring it down today, when the rain stops, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to have a 20-minute walk. I'm not going to time myself. I'm not going to put any pressures on myself. I'm just going to get outside. I'm just going to have like a 20-minute walk. So little things like that don't sound like they're going to make a massive difference, but they really can completely adjust your approach to this kind of more introverted time of year. So really looking at those structures, really looking at those day-to-day routines that you have, and making small adjustments where you can to accommodate kind of how you feel day to day. So being a lot more mindful of your overall well-being, and just, you know, giving yourself a bit of extra self-love, self-care when you need it most. So then we go down to 8 of Wands. So 8 of Wands is very much, I mean, wands represent fire. We're dealing with a lot of fiery energy at the moment. And what this kind of says is really encouraging us to find a way to ground this energy that we have. So with the full moon in Aries, like I said, we may feel kind of on edge or a bit like jittery, or we may feel like we need to be doing the same amount of stuff that we were doing over here with the 3 of Cups. But we have this Hermit and 3 of Swords over here, really telling us to actually slow down, turn our attention inwards, really start to relax and kind of ease this energy, subdue the energy, ground it a lot more. And because we have it diagonal from these 2 Pentacle cards as well, it is kind of saying, you know what, now is the time to just kind of start to settle, to ground. And the 8 of Wands is all about the kind of fast action that we have, and it's in the U position. So it's about taming your own expectations, what you kind of feel like you should be doing, or trying to, you know, tie up all those loose ends before the end of the year. Usually when we get to this time and 2022 is looming, we feel like, oh, I had all these plans that I was going to do in 2021 and I haven't done them, and I have to like rush to do them now. But then that doesn't match up with the energy, because your energy is a lot kind of slower and your vibes are a lot kind of, your vibrations are a lot lower. So you feel a bit more kind of chilled and like you've got no urgency. But then you've got this, which is kind of like, oh my God, panic and do everything because the end of the year is coming, and they kind of conflict with each other. So in order to kind of manage this 8 of Wands that we have in the U position, really finding ways to ground it. And so that could come into your routines that you're putting into place, really assessing your routines, your habits. What could you do to add a bit more grounding into your everyday? Is there a way that you could slow yourself down? Is there a way that you could stop yourself from panicking about goals? Could you reassess the goals that you had at the beginning of the year? Could you reassess the kind of things you wanted to achieve but didn't end up achieving? Really having a look into those self-set expectations that you had. And that could be another thing to really look into with the Hermit and the 3 of Swords, really assessing those pressures that we put on ourselves at the beginning of the year, and that are maybe now coming back around because we're facing this end of year cycle. You know, how can you show yourself a bit of compassion? You know, the things may have come up during the year that have stopped you from achieving a particular goal that you had at the beginning of 2021. And instead of beating yourself up about that, how could you show yourself a bit more self-love? How could you show yourself a bit more compassion? Which then leads us into 6 of Wands. So this is in the environment position. This is something that is kind of there to support us, there to kind of guide us if we need it. It's a bit like, I always find the environment position a bit like an ace. So it's not necessarily something that is happening to you. It's more something that is there if you need it. Kind of like just a support, really, like a life saver if you need it. So the 6 of Wands is all about achievement in the realm of fire. So we've talked about having those goals that we're kind of rushing to kind of achieve and tie up before the end of the year. And the 6 of Wands, in this kind of flow of energy that we have here next to this very grounding 9 of Pentacles, is saying, you know what, you can achieve these things that you set out if you want to, but do it in a way where you're not going to burn out. You're not going to completely throw your well-being out the window just so that you can say you've ticked off this thing. So really being mindful of what your goals are, what you're kind of aiming for before the end of the year, maybe over just like the next month or so as we head towards December and a very busy kind of Christmassy period. But really just assessing those goals that we've got and knowing when it's okay to kind of say, you know what, actually, I don't need to achieve this by the end of the year. I can roll it over to 2022. I can roll this goal over and say, okay, well, I didn't do it this year, but I will do it next year, and put it at the top of the pile. So really just assessing those, again, those kind of self-expectations you put on yourself. Then we have our second major arcana card, the Fool. And that is in the hopes and fears position. So that could tie in quite nicely with these kind of 2 wands cards that we have here, in this feeling of needing to get everything done by the end of the year because we don't want to feel like we've wasted the year. So the hopes and fears position with the Fool, there's this hope that we can really turn things around, but there's also a fear that we may not do. And so that can be quite kind of anxiety inducing. And with the 8 of Wands at the base of this is the card that's really fueling this kind of fear of not achieving what we set out to achieve in the beginning. You know, at the start of 2021, you may have had this really renewed, refreshed energy where you were like, I'm going to do all these things and it's going to be awesome and this year's going to be amazing. And now you're kind of coming to the point where you're maybe reflecting on that, especially if we're doing this hermit internal work. You may kind of go, oh, here are all the things that I was going to achieve and I haven't achieved them yet. Is this going to be a waste of this Fool energy? And the Fool energy that we kind of have it throughout the year. We always have some sort of Fool energy with us. So it's really about assessing that Fool energy and really saying, okay, well, what did I learn from the leap that I took at the beginning of the year? What did I actually achieve? So using this 6 of Wands kind of together with the Fool, really thinking about things that you have achieved. What kind of things have you achieved through taking a risk or putting yourself out there, or new things that you maybe have tried and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work, but having a gratitude for the fact that you, first of all, could do that, you could give it a go. And then secondly, that you had the bravery to do that and that you had the courage to take that risk, whether it worked or it didn't work. Really finding a gratitude and an acceptance about all the things that have gone before. So that can be, again, part of this hermit work that we're doing, and really just thinking about how we've approached the year, how we're approaching ourselves right now, how we're kind of treating ourselves right now. Are we being too hard on ourselves? Are we not showing ourselves the compassion that we deserve? Or are we, giving ourselves the self-love that we need right now? So really just assessing all of that together. And then finally, our outcome card, the 2 of Wands. So 2 of Wands, again, we're kind of starting something. We are using the 2 of Wands, this balance in the realm of fire, balancing our power, our energy, really finding ways to bring things into equilibrium. So that's the outcome card. So what that says is this is kind of what we're aiming for from all this hermit work. So we need to do all of this and incorporate all these little things that we've talked about in order to reach a place where we feel a lot more centered. We feel like we know which direction we're going in. We know kind of what we want to achieve by the end of the year. So we've done this kind of work here. We know what we want to let go of and leave or put to one side. So we have a lot more clarity about not only what we've done in the past, having gratitude for the year that has gone by, but also having a lot of optimism for the year that is in front of us as well. So we will find that kind of balance, that energetic balance that is down here a bit kind of full on, because we have the Eight of Wands, and especially at the full moon of Aries, where it's like full on Aries kind of energy, this fiery, authoritative energy that we have going on. By doing all of this kind of hermit work, we can kind of tame that energy a little bit more and kind of bring it back into balance. So that's what we're kind of aiming for in the latter half of this moon cycle, or if you are kind of going from full moon to full moon, that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on for the next 31 days. So hopefully that is helpful and it all made sense. But if it didn't, let me know, because I am happy to go through anything that you guys are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Kat, please help me. So that is it for this month's full moon reading. I hope it was helpful. If you do have any questions, please drop me an email. I'm always happy to answer anything that you kind of are wondering about. And yeah, that's it. So I'll see you next month. Bye guys.